Hey guys, in this video we're going to cover how to set up and record a MIDI instrument in Cubase 12. We'll then go over other recording techniques with the MIDI instrument, including step input and adjusting the timing of all our recordings with quantization. For this video, I'll be using the Akai MPK249, which is a 49-key USB MIDI keyboard with all sorts of extra options like drum pads and controllers. I'll link these in the video description down below. If you haven't checked out our last few videos, make sure to do that first because that's where we covered how to create a MIDI instrument track and use the key editor and drum editor. For a standard USB MIDI instrument, all you need to do is connect it to the computer by the USB cable. Cubase 12 sets it up as plug and play, so it will detect an instrument that's connected while the project is running without having to restart it. For more advanced options and to check out if a MIDI controller is connected, go to the Studio menu at the top, select Studio Setup, and go to MIDI on the sidebar. With the MIDI controller connected, add a MIDI instrument track with the VST instrument plugin loaded and make sure to load a sound so that it's all enabled. This is what we covered in the last few videos. Like with an audio recording, to activate the MIDI track for recording, press the record arm button. I'll use a simple drum track here. It'll show up by default in the key editor after, but we can always go to the MIDI menu at the top and open it with the drum editor, and the MIDI tools will work the same regardless of what we do. It just changes how the clip is displayed in the project. To get the clip actually displayed as a drum recording in MIDI, we need to use the left zone inspector view and set the drum map to our MIDI instrument for this track. When that's done, the MIDI clips on the track will show up as drum recordings with the hit markers rather than the rectangles with the duration, and clicking on it will also bring up the drum editor rather than the key editor. From the inspector view, you can select the MIDI controller you're using from the track input. The default will just be to record all MIDI going into the software at once on all channels. You may or may not want this depending on if you have multiple things being recorded simultaneously, but you can make it more specific to a certain MIDI controller or channel. Now make sure the project tempo is set correctly and the metronome is enabled in the bottom right of the screen so we'll be playing along with the grid. Then just hit record and play along on the keyboard or the drum pad. The recording may be a little rough to start, but we'll go over how to fix that later with some manual editing and quantization. One of the great features of Cubase 12 is that we can record multiple MIDI takes overlapping and merge them all together into one clip. For this drum recording, I can go record all the cymbals, kick and snare, and hi-hats all separately to make it easier to play on the keyboard or drum pad, and Cubase 12 will combine it together. The timing may not be perfect, but we can fix that pretty easily with the quantization tools later. Let's go over step input now. Like last time, I'll use the draw tool to create a blank MIDI clip and open it with the key editor. We use a little staircase button in the top right of the key editor to turn on step input. I want it set to record pitch and note velocity at the beginning, but not the end. Then click on the grid itself to set the start point of the step input and don't click on the timeline above. With the step input, we have to set the quantization start and end time. I'll set notes to eighth notes for the start and end time. If you want shorter notes, you can set the duration to be shorter than the start time. With that done, just start playing notes or chords on the keyboard one by one and they'll be added in sequence to the grid for the start time and duration with the velocity you pressed it at. The last thing to go over is quantization. We've talked about this a little bit in the last videos when referencing the grid snapping for note start times and duration, but it's more of a feature we'll use with recorded music. Whenever we record music, there's always slight variations in timing so that the notes don't always line up right on the musical time grid. Sometimes, to tighten things up, we'll want to automatically snap everything to that grid or closer to the grid, and that's what the quantization tool does. It will bring all the note start times to the right position on the grid, or adjust the note durations as well if you're using a keyboard. Of course, all this can be done manually by editing individual notes, but quantization automates that process and saves a lot of time. Let's start by opening a quick drum riff in the drum editor after it's been recorded. We can see immediately that all these notes are roughly keeping time with the grid, but some are a bit slower or faster than they need to be. The first step to quantization is defining the resolution of the snapping. If we're using eighth notes, for example, we want to make sure the quantization tool is set to eighth notes and not quarter or 16th notes, otherwise it will snap to those closest notes and mess it all up. From the drum editor, press the E button to the right side of the quantization panel to open the quantization tool window. Set the drop down to eighth notes or whatever note value you need for your project. At the default settings, it will snap everything to the grid with perfect accuracy. This can sometimes make the playing sound too robotic and lose the feel of it, so we don't always want to do that. The first way around that is to use the soft quantize option, and in this case we can see we're snapping it to be 60% of the way to the grid lines, but not all the way. The notes sound more on time, but it still leaves some variability to it. Next, we have the catch range. This defines how far a note can be set off and still be quantized to the grid. So say we set this to 10%. Any notes that are more than 10% of the way away from the grid lines will not be quantized and will stay as they are, but quantization will be applied to the ones that are within that catch zone. We can also apply a safe range within the catch zone so that the notes that are closest to the grid lines are not affected, while notes that are farther away may be quantized. Cubase 12 makes this process fairly simple for a MIDI track like this, but it's just a matter of preference to add as much quantization as you like. So that covers how to record MIDI, record with step input, and quantize the MIDI recordings in Cubase 12. In the next tutorial, we're going to cover some similar tools to quantize audio tracks to readjust their timing. Thanks for checking out this video on MIDI recording and editing in Cubase 12. If this video helped you out, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is released. You can also check the video description for products featured in this video and our social media accounts to keep up with all our new content.